Hey everyone, and welcome to your favorite YouTube series, our favorite YouTube series as well, Not Another Demo. Now, you might be saying, Matt, if it's truly your favorite YouTube series, why have you guys not done one of these in about 5 months? And we could spend the entire time talking about that. But we're here now, and that's what's most important. So I've got Aaron and Lloyd with me today, and we're super happy to have Kenny Purcell and Oded from Akeyless. And so, Kenny, I'll let you guys do a better introduction of yourself than I'll ever do. But the purpose of this series is to kind of get away from marketing, get away from acronyms, get away from kind of the standard routine, and have a real conversation about what a company is doing in our always changing, very busy security world that is, seems like every time we go, it couldn't get any more crazy than it is. It gets more crazy than it is. So with that, Kenny, I'll pass it over to you. I guess give us an introduction, and then the first question I'll ask is, when we look at our calendars, they're booked full, right? And so why would someone put an hour on their calendar to talk with you guys? And from that, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Matt and crew. Really appreciate being here. And as Matt mentioned, my name is Kenny Purcell. So I'm a regional sales manager for Akeyless, specifically to the Midwest region. And while I'm not a Michigan native, I do live in Grand Rapids. So Michigan is very near and dear to me. My wife is from this area, so foresee myself being here for quite some time. And outside of Oded and I being just two charismatic individuals, there's a number of reasons, that taking time out of the day to hear us out, and kind of some cool things that we're doing in the cybersecurity space when it comes to secrets management and secure remote access. There's just a lot of really neat things going on. So with that said, I'll shoot it over to Oded for his intro.
Hey guys, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hi everyone. Oded, co-founder and CEO of Akeyless, based in Tel Aviv for now. So no interesting story about Tel Aviv besides the fact that it's now evening time. For going back to your question, first of all, it doesn't have to be 1 hour. That's the best news here.
I like this already.
You don't need to schedule and book 1 hour to get the value. If there's anyone that asks you to book full 1 hour to provide you, the sense of why is it important to speak with them, that's too much. So we can definitely do that in less. So let's do the following. Secrets management, right? Secrets. What are those secrets? Secrets are basically credentials, certificates, and keys that are used within everything that we do today, within any computerized environment, both by human to machine interaction as well as machine to machine interactions. Workload use them, automation uses it, CI/CD processes, configuration management processes, what have you, right? Kubernetes containers needs it in order to operate and communicate with databases, etc. Okay, so everyone is using it. The problem and the known problem is that there is a known phenomenon named sprawl of secrets. All of those credentials, certificates, and keys are being used in many different places, and they need to be centrally managed and unified by their use case. Okay, so there is a security problem with having those secrets to be leaked. There is an operational problem with understanding where are my secrets and how can I use it and when, etc. Right? And eventually, there is a great lack of knowledge in the realm of how to manage them, especially in a highly scaled environment, because secrets management is a mission critical system, right? Because if it's down, your production is down. I'll take this 1 minute. If it's not good enough, then we need to go back to the drawing board.
So it's not always that we get to talk with like the guy that started the company. So I would like to just ask some questions from you of like when you were starting the company, what were the security is a crowded space, right? I think any of the different security areas have lots of vendors in them. So what was it that you saw from the market that you were entering when you started the company that you felt that you could do, better than everyone else?
Wow, awesome. So that's a personal angle. Let's start with a personal angle before, we get to, what is it, the gap in the market, because obviously there is one. But beforehand, when Akeyless came as an opportunity, we're 3 co-founders. We were starting with a technology for encryption keys management, basically. And that was a very innovative one. The ability to encrypt whatever we want using fragments of encryption keys without ever combining the fragments, right? Meaningless, right? This means basically Akeyless. It's Akeyless encryption. We're able to decrypt without the whole key in the memory in one place. That was the beginning. And then exactly as you've mentioned, what made you want to go into that space, and what was the gap there? And what happened, having us all to be enterprise people, coming from enterprise, working at enterprise and vendors of enterprise software and security, we basically looked, and my specialty is in the realm of identity and access management. I've done it for many years, SSO projects, identity management, and so on. I've done it back then in CA Technologies. I've been here before in the Israeli Defense Forces. So basically the understanding of the fact that there is here a new way to tell an old story, right? There's an old story around identity management. There is an old story, not in a bad way, right? I mean, it's an old story about privileged access management, right? And allegedly, speaking about, those special credentials could have been perceived as another privileged access management problem, another identity and access management problem, right? But the fact is that what we've seen is that by looking at the world from the eyes of a secret, right, from any type of secret, either those are certificates, credentials, or keys, then suddenly it's no longer just a problem of machine identity. It's not just the problem of identities, rather than how do I manage the different processes for those very important objects. Okay, so it becomes even a greater thing when you think of it, because a certain credential is not perceived as an identity, really, right? If you think of it like the credentials that you're using on your laptop, it's what helps you to prove your identity, but it's not the identity itself, right? So one thing that we've seen in that is that secrets management as is has a lot of overlap areas from many other different areas. And that intrigued us, because when you think of it, secrets management also includes certificate authority, or the ability to issue certificates, right? So part of certificate management is included within secrets management. So, and part of privileged access, the ability to rotate credentials for operating systems accounts, right? For local operating system accounts of Windows and Linux, this can happen within the secrets management system. Part of key management can also happen within secrets management. The whole purpose of secrets management is basically to be the interface for the DevOps people, the developers, right? The platform guys, the engineers, to basically be able to get all of those older concepts of security with a newer way, right? To the world of automation, to the world of orchestration, to consume those secrets within the new world. That was basically intrigued us. And obviously the ability or the option to see, we saw a great gap. Back then when we started the company, there was only one large open source solution out there, and maybe some smaller ones that were trying to solve it, with only one big enterprise solution that we thought that has a lot of gaps there. And for us, that was a great opportunity, to go over on the ship and to start sail and to plan how we're winning this thing.
So to show you how stuff has even evolved in the last couple of years, is I would like to throw application identity in there, right? Like, especially in the healthcare space, we're having to create APIs for everything. Like, for example, we have new government mandates for around cost transparency, right? By July of this year, the insurance wing of the company healthcare company I work for, we have to have so many procedures that have a cost to them to make it publicly available, right? So now we are putting out information in application information in ways that we didn't before. So you have that identity. On the medical side, right, we share more electronic medical record information via these different applications. So to me in healthcare, application identity is the future, because I need to be able to have those keys function not only in a way that's not going to interrupt business and get us in trouble with the government, but I still need to protect the individual identity. So going into what you said, I guess my biggest question is, what are you seeing in regards to when you have to have multiple applications talk and you're passing, you're doing that authentication and you got to pass those keys over? What are some of the struggles that you're seeing with businesses out there in that regard?
Yeah, so obviously when those requirements happen, the one thing that you want to make sure is that two parties can authenticate to each other. So both of them, or the requester of that session, would need to use some kind of credentials in order to prove that identity, right? Now the real problem starts with, after you're thinking, okay, I'll take all my secrets for all of those places, I'll put them within one box. I'll call that whatever, a vault, right? And then I'll have my applications to use the secrets within that vault in order to authenticate their own identities whenever they're needed, as you've mentioned. The problem is how to initiate the whole thing. Where is the secret zero? Where is the bootstrapping here, right? Because initially something needs to bootstrap the whole thing. That was another challenge that we've seen. The cloud service providers, if you're running whatever workload on top of the cloud service providers IAM, so mostly this problem is solved, right? You can use the Azure identity, you can use the AWS IAM or ARN code, whatever you want, right? The real problem, and that was something that we've seen right from the beginning, we very like to take some, an old problem and to give it also a solution, because the on-prem should not be undertaken. On-prem still needs to have solutions. So we've seen that this problem was never solved on the on-prem. So for that, we've taken the initiative to create a mechanism that would allow us to create that bootstrapping solution with an identity that rotates itself, so that it will make sure that you would never have that bootstrapping or secret zero that someone can somehow reveal, right? That was the great challenge with initiating the whole process and being able to truly protect the application identities. One last note on that, by the way, when you started to speak about application identities, something struck my mind. 7 years ago ish, you've had more employees on a certain company than you've had workloads/servers, right? You've seen organizations that has 50,000 employees and 10,000 servers for that sense, okay? Today, this is not even comparable. Today, you have much more workloads, components, microservices, basically machine and workload identities than you actually have employees. And this is just, in one sentence, you can basically explain what is it that have happened here, a true revolution within 7 years that need to be addressed.
So you bring up a good point. We even struggled. So our healthcare system's big enough to where we have an internal software development, and obviously not a lot of healthcare systems can say that, but we actually did run into issues before internally. And this is where some people are going to say, well, if it's all on your, if it's all on your network, what does that matter? But when you have applications that can act individually, right? So some sort of, cost transparency application, and then you have your regular insurance claims, portal or what have you. Yes, these are both hosted and codes running internally, but they both go out to the internet, and so when they're on the internet, they don't know each other, right? So now you have a situation, how do you securely pass an API key between two of these systems that live on your network, but their primary purpose is to live in the internet? So is that something you guys were able to help help? Because that was a struggle. We solved it, but it took a little while to solve that problem.
Definitely, that problem exactly was solved. And in many cases, what happening is that there is some kind of an agreement of a shared key that both application has, and they're putting that shared key somewhere, trying to put it and hide it somewhere that no one would find it, and then they can switch between them some data and to encrypt it, such as API keys or whatever they need, right? So by having, and this is where we're connecting it to the previous question, right? Or the previous saying that we've talked, by connecting it to a mechanism that allows you to have machine identities or application identities, regardless of where they are, whether they are on AWS, whether they are on your on-prem, whether they are in whatever environment, right? If they have their own identities, then they can authenticate to a third party, which is the secrets management service, right? In that case, as I've mentioned, and then they can prove their own identities and say, hey, please, dear secrets management service, provide us with the credentials that would help us to communicate with each other, or provide us with the encryption key that we need in order to decrypt both of our data, right? So the shared secret now is being managed by a third party, which is the secrets management service, as long as both applications have their identities, right? So that's number one. Number two, in that sense, is now you can take it even one step further. You can say, okay, that shared secret or credentials that we would want to provide to one of the applications in order for it to authenticate to the other one, right? Now, those are naturally and quite, most cases they are static by nature. So you're asking, most times you're asking the same API key to authenticate to the same application, right? The only thing that you're adding here is that you're not writing or not storing that API key within your local configuration files, right?
Or I was going to say a developer hard coding a password. I've never heard of that.
Heard of it. Yeah, never heard of it. So exactly, that's the point. So let's assume that you've taken that step and you put out the credential out of the code as always, and also out of the configuration files, and you've just you've SDK'd the whole thing and fetched that secret from the secret management service. Okay, now again, what really happens here is that again and again you're asking the same static credentials. So what can happen is that the one that gets those credentials, as well as the actual application that initiates the whole session, both of them can actually write those secrets to their logs. And in cases where some stack trace is happening or whatever, they can also provide those secrets to their end user, God forbid, right? So for that, there's the second level of either rotating that credential, rotating that secrets, and this is what the secret management service is able to do. This is what we do, right? Or also to provide you with dynamically created, just-in-time created credentials. So whenever application A wishes to communicate with application B, then the secrets management service would basically approach the application B, create new credentials, provided to application A for them to communicate, and those credentials will be deleted after being used. So this means that every time the session starts, new credentials are being created and facilitating a new session, and then again and again and again. This particular solution would provide you the ability to go to the great vision of zero standing privileges, right? Imagine that your entire workloads are working like this in a dynamic manner. Then only the application that speaks right now that needs a certain permission and access, only them would have live credentials to use, and you would not have any standing other credentials, other accounts within your environment.
So I got to give you props because Matt, he listened to us. He basically spoke out JIT. He didn't say JIT. He said JIT. So I was just about ready to make him say, okay, what does JIT mean? And Oded was like, just in time. So kudos to that.
You've asked to be to be simple with that. So I'm not even trying with any acronyms.
You know, here's the thing about acronyms though, right? Like some of those words are terrible to say together. So we understand the reason for having them. It's just some, you know, like there's acronyms that are the same, right? And sometimes, and then it gets even more confusing. So we're just trying to break through it. Now, the rule does stipulate if you explain it once, you can then go back to using the acronym. So you can say JIT as many times as you want now. I think that's how that goes. So
the second part was, I like your thought process. One, I'm not shocked. It's Matt and I were just joking the other day about what is Israel become the tech security hub, because it seems like every other day we're getting a security startup out of Israel, which is a compliment. But I like the concept of, you talked about PAM, privileged access management, in relation to API security, right? So this is kind of a learning moment for me, because everybody knows, you know, we talk about all the time about how we want our account admins, right? Our global admins. This is something where Lloyd shook his head back in the day because he had to fight tooth and nails. But you want your global admins to check in and check out passwords, right? Especially, you know, with root level accounts. So I love that concept of taking that the way of doing that, how you do it in the PAM world, and applying it to like API keys. That's pretty different. I gotta give some, I'm not paid to say this, but I do got to give you guys props for taking that correlation. That's very cool.
But it's even more than this. This is just the start. And thank you for saying it. And thank you for sharing that, your thoughts on this. But this is just the start of being able to think of, you know, because that particular thing was already there. So we cannot take the credit for that. But I'll tell you this. At the beginning of your talk, you said, of what you just said, you know, why not having check-in, check-out of your password, right? And to make sure that no one knows it, etc. What we've done actually is quite the opposite. When customers, you know, and practitioners, when we talked with them about, you know, having those credentials to be injected into Kubernetes clusters using a sidecar, injected to Jenkins and so on and so forth, you know, the problem here is mostly the scale, right? If you solve the scale thing, which is why we chose to go SaaS in a multi-region and a multi-cloud infrastructure, and when you solve the scale problem, then you can basically provide a service for whatever application number that you wish, and providing them secrets and credentials on the fly, right? After this is solved, you take that combination of JIT, just-in-time created dynamic secrets, credentials, and then you go back to the PAM world, right, to the privileged access management world, and you say the following: why should administrators need to check in, check out, and then copy paste, and then go to somewhere? Why not using, you know, the ability to temporarily have new credentials and to inject them into the session, right? Instead, just like we're injecting into application that requires it, either Jenkins, Circle CI, Kubernetes, whatever, right? Let's leverage our ability to also interconnect with external identity provider, right? And just saying the following: I'm a privileged user. My personal account does not have any permissions whatsoever. I'm logging in with my Active Directory, Azure Directory, Azure Identity, Google, whatever, Okta, right? I'm logging into a portal, and then I'll click on something that I'm allowed to, for that sense, like a catalog of applications. And immediately I will be redirected to that particular server. If this is an RDP session, an SSH session, whatever, but I would not need to reprovide my identity, okay, as I've just logged in. And Akeyless would be the one to actually inject that into your session.
So almost like using the concept, I see where you're going with this now. So almost use the concept of like SSO, like single sign-on, right? So using an ping federate, whatever have you concept with relation to API keys. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
This is where the worlds are starting to basically, get together. The privileged access management vendors have tried to do that in the last 3 years. But what we've done exactly the opposite. We've first solved the problem of the new world with a higher scale, and then we said, let's use those principles and go back. So this is where we extended to more of a secure remote access also solutions. That's basically how we decided to do that. And exactly how you say, we are not an identity provider. We never wanted to. It's not the business of being an identity provider. That's a wrong way to go. There are enough of them. The thing is how to get all of those functions all together and providing also, the session recording, right? So basically, think of it, the worlds of privileged access for humans in a way, right? It speaks on the credentials. So it's similar to machines, but they are quite different in terms of scaling. But there are some principles that if you reconnect them, you can get to a very interesting offering in that manner, right? It's like, and actually this is just where it starts. There are a lot of very interesting parts with particularly how zero trust is being made. And, I know zero trust is for sure not an acronym, but you would all agree that, some of you would of course agree that it has some, it's a concept that is being told maybe too much, but JIT is obviously part of it. And if you think of it, having one system to provide you with a whole list of who can connect to what and who did what on whatever system, and all of that is being built on top of a just-in-time access. So you need to justify your access on every time, whatever kind of identity you are, either human or machine, then you got the ultimate zero trust hub that you need. But I'll stop here saying zero trust no more.
No. It's good. So obviously there's so many things I can't talk specifics to because I want to keep my job. But I will say that in the last 3 months, we're starting to see an increase in sophistication in probing techniques when it comes to web applications. Now, what I mean by that, and I want to be very careful here because I want to keep my job, but it's top of mind. We're seeing the bad guys or bad actors. I don't want to say guys anymore because there's plenty of girl hackers out there. We're seeing applications probed in different ways to be able to see not only what that web application does by itself, but that cross-application behavior that I kind of talked about, that situation I talked about. When you do these kind of, just-in-time transactions, what advice would you have for when you're building these for logging, right? Because now you have a situation to where we have to, when you're doing a forensics investigation, you have to be clinical, right? Like this actor did exactly this, because if you run into any gray area, right, then, we have so many government mandates in healthcare that like we can get yelled at and they could disagree with our findings. So it's very important for us to be black and white. We can't have any gray when we're doing that logistics and that logging and stuff. With your system, are you able to log those multiple interactions, right? Because you're doing it, JIT. Is that something you're solving, or is it something that's kind of like on your radar? And you don't have to give away any industry secrets if you don't want to answer that. That's okay, because I know I'm making Kenny a little bit nervous here.
Yeah.
we can always say that we can tell you, but then we need to kill you, etc. But that's not the thing. Not at all. This is a very famous problem, having first of all, JIT, great concept. It takes time to deploy, right? Honestly, I haven't seen anyone doing it in 100% of the workloads, right? But let's say that you do, or even if you're using it with 20% of your secrets and credentials and identities proof, right? Eventually, you're asking something about, it's very simple. If you're using a just-in-time identity, and you're elevating your own session using a just-in-time identity, whether you are a workload or human, how can I know later on, or how would the enterprise know? How would the company know who did what? So first of all, of course, everything is logged. That's number one. That's like before everything. We're logging every request by any identity. This is why we insist, and you should go with that with any secrets management system. You need to make sure that it knows how to verify exactly who's the requester identity. and to log exactly. I provided you, it's like, going to a library. I provided you a book, so I know who you are and I know which book you got. The same goes with when you're asking in access. I know you. This is the just-in-time created credentials that I provided you, and I provided it only to you, not to many other. Okay, it's not that we're pre-creating their credentials rather than creating it specifically for you. It takes like, milliseconds, right? So first of all, yes, it is logged and you can get that information. That's like no-brainer. The thing is next is that what happens specifically for humans within the session, right? Because when workloads are doing something, it's programmatically. So you can basically go back and ask, what did the machine do? And see the script for that sense. But with humans, right, they can get creative with what they've done, especially in privileged access. So for that, we're also recording the whole session, because what we're providing basically is it's like a proxy between you and the external and the internal resource, right? You're in your living room. There is an internal resource in whatever private network. Then that particular proxy called the Akeyless Bastion, you're logging into via that Bastion, and the Bastion itself provides the credentials, injects that into the session, and then also recording whatever you're doing in your SSH, kubectl, whatever you're running.
Okay,
So,
that's good. So that helps me with a forensics investigation, because I just need the metadata, right? I don't need tons of information. I just may, for the sake of, notice, I need to know that it was at this time, this day, and it was, and it was this user that jumped over to that. So that's good. Cause that was one of my concerns is, with JIT is the amount of logs that you guys are probably generating is huge. But if I like where you're going, if you're focused on key metadata, that's helping me, because that's the key information I need. And obviously from a business point of view, you don't have, Splunk logs that are like that.
And you can do even more, by the way. You can even do more by just, if you want, it's a matter of, a naming convention. Your just-in-time credentials that are created for you, Aaron, can basically be created as temp.aaron random number, right? So your unique ID can actually be entered within the unique ID of the temporary credentials if you want. And by that, to have a very simple correlation between your true identity to the temporary ones that were created for you. And this is even if you want, not to have another log source, you can go to the operating system, to the database that was logged in, etc., and to see it there. So that's another great workaround. Some like it and some less, but this is how it looks like.
Cool. All right. I'll be quiet. I won't ask any more questions because we're running up against
You're always welcome to ask questions there.
Now, I must say, I always learn new things when I hear Oded talk. And just to comment further, from the business side of it, there's three main components of what we're tackling, right? And the first one's going to be reducing the risk. And so the value in the message is resonating with the folks that we're talking to day in, day out. Security folks, the DevOps folks, right? You name it. Being able to combine the secrets component in creating and housing those secrets, as well as the secure remote access piece, the just-in-time credentials, or the JIT, as we discussed in length. The second factor is going to be reducing the cost. This is a SaaS platform, frankly, first of its kind, right, in a lot of regards. And so there's no infrastructure to deploy. And so that in itself, when you start talking to these folks, it's wow. Okay, so now I'm able to do the things that I used to have to do with multiple vendors and providers into what we're offering, right? And then the third is going to be increasing friction, meaning making it a lot more difficult to do the bad things, right? So whether that's the humans within the organization or the machines, right? So the factors of being able to incorporate everything into this platform is really beneficial, and the value is starting to resonate a lot more with folks.
So Kenny, you're kind of going down a path there that I do always like to bring up in these conversations, because throughout my years in security, I've seen lots of great companies that have great technology, cutting edge, whatever, and yet they're hard to work with. It's hard to get through the purchasing process. After the POs are signed, they disappear on you until the next time they need another PO from you. So talk a little bit about, what does it look like working with Akeyless, from that first call kind of through, hey, now we're a customer and moving forward?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the biggest items, I guess is a good word you could say, that I like to discuss openly and upfront, the transparency factor of our sales process. So just as important in understanding the buying process is making sure the folks know what they can expect from us. And so we are extremely hands-on and very white glove approach into how we do this. So what I mean by that is, of course, there's going to be the initial discussion of, okay, is there a live project? Is there a challenge? What are the difficulties you're running into in the current environment or the future state of what you're looking to get to, right? So sometimes it's an element of both. And then we say, okay, there's going to be a POC session naturally, built into this. And so what we found is making that the big easy button for folks up front initially to run smooth POCs, white glove POCs. And just to give you an idea, we're averaging about 10 to 14 days for a full lifecycle POC, which it's crazy, right? In previous lives of what I've come from, I mean, they're months long, right? So the communication barriers are a lot more smooth in that regard. And then ultimately we align and make sure that we are lockstep with that POC plan. So all the stakeholders are involved. We know exactly who's doing what, who's responsible for what, because again, we are combining, in a majority of cases, the security side of the house with the DevOps side of the house. So traditionally
down all of our spines.
Right. Traditionally, right. It's always been a headache, and they stay in those silos. But with us, we bring those two silos together. So that hopefully that gives you a good generalization and overview of how we run the process. But that's a
good ending segment. I was just going to say, Matt, these guys remind me a little bit of, I want to go on record because I've picked 3 called thoroughbred horses in the last couple of years. A little bit of Abnormal went and did things. Yep. Sneak, your former company, went and did good things, and Ubico. So I think I'm gonna we'll have to promote you guys on LinkedIn. You guys,
man, if you have impressed Aaron Greg, you've done something.
A hot and upcoming company. Yeah. So
appreciate that. Yeah.
Now I think this is what I learned today, fellas, is I miss doing these. These conversations. I think this is exactly the type of conversation. I wish all of our conversations were like this, right? Which we're working on. We're trying to get there. Even in those fun corporate settings, like, let's get into the heart of these things and actually, figure this stuff out. We only did 2 acronyms, I think, and we did them correctly. So Oded, kudos to you on that one. And Kenny, no pressure at all talking, when the founder of your company is sitting there watching you. So well done there.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'll dry the sweat off later.
So we will have, so for everyone that's watching, please like, subscribe, do all the fun YouTube stuff. We'll have all of their contact information and other things in the description. So read that, comment, share, all the fun YouTube stuff, right? So with that, Kenny, Oded, thank you so much for being a part of this. And we will see everyone for episode 29. Thanks, everybody.
Definitely a pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.